I'm not exaggerating when I say Zootopia 2 is not only better than the original, but it also introduces the greatest fictional character ever created. I just watched the film, so here's my full spoiler-free thoughts on the best and worst parts of the movie, and at the very end, I'll give a big warning and go over some spoiler points. So this movie picks up right after the first film, where Judy and Nick are now working together as cops, but things aren't going as well as they thought with them being partners together. But the two are forced to start working together and investigating the appearance of a snake in Zootopia that opens up this bigger mystery about the history of reptiles and why there are none in Zootopia. The jokes in this movie are just as funny and witty as in the first film, honestly. There's so many actual laugh out loud moments. Like, I think the adults in my theater were laughing way more than the kids, honestly. A lot of the humor comes from the great new additions to the cast, because there are tons of brand new characters in this film that really add so much to this world. Like, you got Patrick Warburton, one of the most iconic voices in Hollywood, voicing the new mayor, Brian Windancer. This dude is absolutely hilarious every time he's on screen.
I'll see you, honey. I'll be back in a while.
Maybe it's just because I'm hearing Joe Swanson from Family Guy every time he talks, but I'm promising you that Brian Windancer is an absolutely peak character. He steals every scene he's in. You got Andy Samberg in this movie. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know he was casting it until I was literally watching this and heard his voice, but he is really fun in this film, playing one of the Lynx family. I love anytime Kihei Kwan shows up in any project, and he shows up as the snake in this one, and honestly, he also kills it. Like I said, all these new additions really do a great job and hold their own. And there's so many other small characters that just show up in a few random scenes, have like one running gag, like the Zebros, but I laughed every time because they're just so incredibly stupid but very entertaining. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, I do actually think this is better than the first Zootopia, just slightly, and it's mostly because I think the core mystery here and the actual villain are both improvements on the first film. Both of them work really well. The way everything comes together at the end was very satisfying in my opinion. I've seen some people say that it seemed like it was anticlimactic to them. I did not feel that at all. And later in the video, when I get into some spoiler points, I will talk about the specifics of the villain and what I liked about it, but I do think they just did a really great job with the reveal of it overall, who it is, how it works in the story. Honestly, I'm glad they kept it hidden in the trailers. And no, it's not like it's some absolutely mind-blowingly amazing story or anything. At the end of the day, it is still a Disney kids film, but like I said, just the same with the humor and the story overall, Disney is kind of respecting their audience. They're like, yes, this is for kids, but we're gonna make it a story that has some really smart elements in it, some really smart foreshadowing and stuff. The jokes, like I said, are very witty, so it is enjoyable for the entire family to go and see this thing. I actually think the biggest improvement in this movie over the first film is the world building we do to Zootopia, because in the first film, it's really kind of just like, oh yeah, here's this big city that's basically New York City, but for animals. But in this movie, we're actually exploring more of what Zootopia is, the history of how it started, all these different elements and different like areas in Zootopia and right outside of it that you've never seen before. It really just added so much more depth to something that was just like a simple setting in the first movie and actually made it feel like a real living, breathing world. And I feel like that is the benefit of having a sequel. Kids' movies are normally shorter, like an hour and a half to barely 2 hours if it's animated. They keep it very short. So in one movie, yeah, you don't really have time to explore all these different elements of this very interesting world. So with having a sequel, even though people complain about them all the time, it is great because you don't have to explain who our main characters like Nick and Judy are or anything. You just hop into this story, you know the dynamics, and you get to explore a whole new element of it. And I haven't even mentioned Nick and Judy themselves yet. Obviously, they are the core main characters of these stories, and yes, they are still great in this movie. Voice acting just as fun as before. Their dynamic is still great, and like I said, there is that new interesting element where they like thought everything would be working perfectly together with them being partners now as cops, but they are learning that, hey, yeah, our very different styles don't necessarily work well together. So getting to see them kind of work through this on the fly, kind of while they're dealing with this very serious mystery that honestly gets pretty dark for a kids film. There were literally multiple kids crying in my theater, which was kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie. But like I said, they really did cook with the villain in this. And I think the animation overall looks really good in this movie. I have seen some odd complaints of people saying like, oh, this looks AI. I feel like people are forgetting AI is stealing from these movies. Like, just because it's an animated film, they've been working on this thing for literally like the past 5+ years, and you can tell there is a lot of detail in this. All the characters, everything looks great and improved upon from the first movie, so really good job to the animation team. And I honestly feel like Disney has struck gold with the Zootopia franchise, because honestly, there is so much potential for more sequels in this world, so many more ways you can explore different elements of Zootopia, and as long as Nick and Judy and some fun surrounding characters are there, everybody's going to show up for these. They're going to make probably like 5 more of them with how much money this is making at the box office. Now, I do want to get into some spoiler points, talking specifically about like who the villain is and some more elements of the story. So if you don't want to hear that, I am going to give this movie a very strong 8 out of 10. Definitely go and see it with your family if you have younger siblings, or honestly, if you just want to go and see it yourself, it is a good time. This is your last warning. Again, I'm going to get into some spoiler elements here, and we're going to start off with the villain because it's been smartly hidden in the trailers. People are theorizing, oh my god, is it going to be a human or something like that? And I'm glad they did not go that element, because no, the main villain of this movie is not a human. What we think at the beginning of the film is that the snakes and reptiles are actually going to be the villains, but we learn that's not actually the truth. truth. Because the entire premise of this movie is built on the question of, hey, why weren't there any reptiles in the first Zootopia movie? And the reasoning they give us is that because a long time ago, before Zootopia was even founded, a snake ended up killing a tortoise. So when this Utopia was built, all the reptiles were essentially exiled out of the town because everybody didn't trust them. So when Kihei Kwan's character, the snake, shows up in this movie, everybody panics and it's like, oh my god, there is a snake in Zootopia. He's gonna kill us all. He's evil. But Judy Hopps kind of trusts him and is like, hey, I think there's more to this guy than everybody thinks. Let's hear him out on his story. But we end up learning later in the movie that actually the reptiles were all framed for this murder they committed, and that the reptiles and Gary the snake's grandfather in particular was actually the snake that came up with the idea for Zootopia and invented the weather walls that allows all these animals to exist in the same area. But in order to build Zootopia, he needed a business partner, so he started working with the Linksley family, and the Linksley family is pretty much the one that killed the tortoise and framed the snake to pretty much steal the snake's idea of Zootopia and the weather walls and take all the credit for himself. And this is where Andy Samberg's character comes into the movie, because at the beginning of the film, he's working with Gary the snake to kind of find this patent that's proof that, hey, the Linksley family stole this from the snakes, and he's like, I'm gonna expose my own family. I don't want to be like them at all. But then the twist of the movie is actually that Andy Samberg's Lynx character was not trying to expose his own family. He was trying to get this document to burn it and prove to his family, hey guys, I deserve to be in your family. I'm just like you. I'm evil. I burned the proof that you stole this from the reptiles and framed them. And once this dude reveals himself as a villain, this is the part of the movie that kids were literally crying in my theater, because this dude starts moving like he is a Terminator. Absolutely heartless, emotionless. He is just killing people left and right. He is going all out. Honestly, one of the better Disney villains we've had in a very long time. And it is smart from Disney, because obviously with Zootopia 1 having so many twists and turns for the real villain, you knew they were kind of going to do the same thing in this. And I was thinking the entire time, like, okay, is the snake or the lynx going to be evil? But you would never think that a Kihei Kwan or Andy Samberg character, two guys that are playing lovable people pretty much all the time, were going to be the real villain of this movie. But like I said, yes, it is Andy Samberg. The snake is a good guy all along. And honestly, I thought that was a very solid twist. Now, speaking of villains, we do get a big teaser for the next movie in the post-credit scene of this film, which is that at the very end, we see Judy Hopps in her apartment. She walks away, but the camera stays on the windowsill, and we see a feather falling down and landing on her windowsill, because that's another thing we haven't seen in these first two movies, is any birds in Zootopia. So this movie dealt with the reptiles. The next movie is going to be dealing with birds, it seems. And we'll have to see if they do kind of the same thing, where it's like, oh yeah, the birds aren't in here, but they're actually good guys, or maybe the birds are going to be straight up evil in this world. Who knows? There is really just so much potential with this franchise. Like I said, you can do birds in the next movie. Who knows? Maybe we could explore like where all the insects are. Unless I miss them in the first two films, I don't believe there's any in these first two movies. And yes, eventually they could do the human thing, but honestly, I kind of hope they don't. I feel like there is so much potential for more sequels with just sticking in this animal universe. Having a human come into it, I feel like would make everything kind of feel weird and lose the charm of this universe. But if you've seen the movie, let me know your thoughts in the comments below and your rating for it 1 through 10. If you want to hear about the crazy box office records Zootopia 2 is breaking, click the video at the top of the screen right now. Or if you want to see all my other movie reviews on the channel, click the video at the bottom, and thank you for watching.